Final boarding for Flight 347 to Miami. The loudspeaker's voice echoed through the terminal, but my world had already gone silent. Grandpa's words were still hanging in the air, calm, steady, devastating. You can use your $3 million account now, sweetheart. I froze, my boarding pass trembling in my hand. My what? I whispered, staring at him. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. He didn't even look at me. His gaze was fixed on my mother, whose fake smile cracked like glass. The color drained from her face as she stammered, "Dad, what are you talking about?" Grandpa adjusted his old leather hat, the same one he wore since I was little. His tone didn't rise, but there was weight in every word. He muttered quietly, almost to himself, "So they hid it." Mom blinked rapidly. "Hid? What are you?" "Enough," Grandpa said, cutting her off. "That account was opened when she was 5. I told your husband about it when he came asking for help with the mortgage. You two said you'd keep it safe for her college fund. Guess that wasn't true, huh?" The words sliced through the busy noise of the airport, through the rolling suitcases, crying kids, and gate announcements. It felt like everyone stopped breathing for a second. My father cleared his throat, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad, let's not do this here, okay? People are watching." "Oh, they should watch," Grandpa said. "Maybe someone here will remind you what decency looks like." Mom hissed under her breath, "Dad, stop embarrassing us." But he didn't stop. He turned to me, really looked at me for the first time in years, and said softly, "That account was meant for your future, Lila. It's in your name. You just didn't know because someone thought you didn't need to." My voice trembled. What did they do?" He sighed. "They moved the funds under their own management, made you believe you had nothing. I only found out last week when I went through the trust records your grandmother kept." My hands went cold. My parents' eyes darted between each other, like trapped animals. I remembered the countless nights they'd told me, "We can't afford that college," or "Vacations are for rich people, not us." And now this. You both lied to me," I whispered, trying to hold my voice steady. My mom scoffed, her tone sharp with panic. "Lila, it's not that simple. We used some of that money for you, your braces, your car." "Some?" Grandpa's voice boomed. "There was $3 million, not 300. Dad stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Dad, please. You don't understand how hard things were." "I understand theft," Grandpa snapped. "And I understand betrayal." Mom crossed her arms, glaring at him. "You're just doing this because you're angry we didn't let her drop out of college to move in with you." Grandpa chuckled bitterly. "No, sweetheart. I'm doing this because I realized she's been walking around thinking she's worthless while you two live off her trust fund." Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Grandpa," I whispered, "is the money really still mine?" He nodded. "The court already released the records. It's yours, and I made sure no one can touch it again." Mom gasped. You went behind our backs?" He looked at her like she was a stranger. "Behind your backs? After what you did, I should have gone for your throats." People nearby were watching now, a flight attendant, a family sitting by the window, even a little boy with a balloon staring wide-eyed. I couldn't move. My parents stood there, speechless, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet one anymore. "You told me we couldn't afford to fix my car." I said, voice cracking. That I should just be grateful you let me borrow Mom's old one. You made me feel like a burden. Dad's jaw tightened. Don't you talk to us like... Like what? I snapped, my voice trembling but louder now. Like the daughter you used for money? Grandpa's hand rested gently on my shoulder. Let's go, kiddo. You've got a flight to catch. New life waiting. Mom lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. You're not going anywhere until we sort this out. I looked down at her hand, the same hand that once used to braid my hair before school. I pulled it away. You sorted it out when you decided I wasn't worth the truth. Her eyes widened. Lila, please. But I turned to Grandpa. Let's go. He nodded once, pride flickering in his tired eyes. Good girl. As we walked toward the boarding gate, I didn't look back, but I could hear Mom's muffled sobs, Dad's angry whispering, and the hum of the airport swallowing them whole. When we reached the window by the gate, Grandpa stopped and handed me a small envelope. Here, he said. I frowned. What's this? He smiled faintly. The key to your next chapter. You'll know what to do when you open it. Thank you, I whispered. He looked out at the planes, eyes clouded but steady. Just promise me something, kiddo. Don't let their greed turn your heart bitter. But don't let them walk free either. As my flight number echoed through the terminal again, I glanced back one last time. My parents stood frozen by security, pale, broken, and finally silent. For once, I didn't feel like the poor forgotten daughter. I felt like someone who finally mattered, and for the first time in years, I smiled. The girl they made small had just learned how powerful the truth could be. 2 months later, the same airport buzzed with the same chaos, but this time, I wasn't the trembling girl clutching a boarding pass. I was stepping off a first-class flight, my head held high, suitcase gleaming, confidence radiating like armor. The Florida sun had done something to me, not just to my skin, but to my soul. I'd spent weeks with Grandpa, learning what power looked like when it wasn't abused. He'd shown me the account records, the forged signatures, even the emails where my parents had begged the bank to keep everything confidential. They'd built their comfort on my silence. Not anymore. When I walked into the terminal, Grandpa was waiting near baggage claim, leaning on his cane, that same old hat shadowing his eyes. He smiled when he saw me. Didn't waste time buying the nice things, huh? I laughed softly. You told me to stop living like I owed them an apology. That I did, he said, offering his arm. You ready for what comes next? I nodded. More than ever. By the next morning, my parents' world started cracking, quietly, beautifully, and legally. Grandpa's lawyer had filed a formal claim for restitution. My trust account was restored under my full control. Every transaction they'd made, the new cars, the remodeled kitchen, even expensive vacations they took without me, was listed line by line in the report. I didn't have to lift a finger to humiliate them. The truth was doing that on its own. But still, part of me wanted them to see me, to realize the daughter they had treated like a burden had built herself from the ashes of their betrayal. So I planned something subtle. My parents' anniversary was coming up, and they were throwing a small gathering at their house. Really just an excuse to show off the lifestyle my money had bought them. Grandpa and I were invited, though I knew Mom only sent the invitation to save face. I said yes. That evening, I arrived in a midnight blue dress, simple but elegant, with Grandpa walking beside me. Their suburban mansion looked exactly as I remembered, glass, marble, and emptiness. When Mom opened the door, her practiced smile faltered for a second. "Lila, you look different." "Thank you," I said calmly. "So does the house. I guess expensive tastes run in the family." Her smile twitched. "Come in." The living room was filled with people I barely knew, Dad's coworkers, Mom's friends from her book club. Laughter floated around the room, but when Grandpa and I entered, conversations died down for a moment. Dad clapped his hands together. "Everyone, this is our daughter, Lila. Back from Florida." Applause followed, hollow and forced. I smiled politely, then turned toward the grand piano in the corner, the one I'd begged for as a child, the one they'd sold, claiming it was too expensive to keep. "Oh, I see you bought a new piano," I said, running my fingers along the keys. I thought music wasn't a priority. Mom's expression tightened. "Well, things have been good lately." Grandpa leaned close and whispered, "Careful, they're sweating." I grinned slightly. "Good." After dinner, Dad raised a glass for a toast. "To family," he said, looking straight at me. "No matter what happens, blood always brings us together." I set down my glass, heartbeat steady. Actually, sometimes blood just hides the truth better than strangers ever could. A hush fell over the table. Mom's fork clinked against her plate. "Lila, let's not." "Not what?" I said evenly. "Not talk about the $3 million you took from me? Or the college rejection letters I got because you couldn't afford tuition while you were flying to Maui?" Gasps whispered around the table. Dad's face went pale. "This isn't the place." "Maybe it is," Grandpa said, voice low but clear. "Since you two never let her have a voice in your house, maybe it's time others hear what you've done." Mom stood up, trembling. "Dad, please." But Grandpa didn't move. "You made her believe she wasn't enough. You stripped her future for your comfort. And you thought you'd never get caught. Shame on you both." Someone from the crowd muttered, "Wait, what's going on?" Another whispered, "Is this real?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, it's real. But don't worry, I'm not here to ruin the party. I'm here to say thank you." They stared at me, confused. "Because of what you did, I learned that peace doesn't come from money. It comes from truth. And mine's finally free." I turned toward Grandpa. "We should go." But before I left, I walked up to Dad and said quietly, "You once told me I'd never make it without you. Turns out, you never could have made it without me." His eyes dropped to the floor. As Grandpa and I stepped outside, the cold night air hit me like a baptism. The laughter from inside had turned to whispers, and the mansion, the monument to their greed, felt smaller than ever. Grandpa chuckled under his breath. "That was something, kiddo." I smiled. "I didn't do it for revenge." He raised an eyebrow. "No." I looked back once more. "No." I did it so they'd never forget who I became without them. The streetlight caught the edge of my blue dress as we walked to the car. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like someone rewriting her story, one truth at a time. And somewhere deep inside that house, I hoped the silence that followed would echo louder than my words ever could. The morning after the anniversary dinner, the house that once echoed with their laughter went quiet. My mother didn't answer calls. My father didn't show up to work. Word about the airport scene and the dinner confession had spread faster than wildfire through their social circle. Meanwhile, I woke up in Grandpa's small lakeside cabin, sunlight flickering off the water, peace settling over me for the first time in years. No tension, no manipulation, just quiet, honest air. Grandpa was already sitting at the table, sipping his coffee. "They'll call," he said without looking up. I smiled faintly. Let them. He finally looked at me. You handled yourself well, Lila. Didn't raise your voice once. That kind of calm scares people like them more than anger ever could. I nodded, though part of me still felt raw. I didn't do it for revenge. I just wanted to be seen, to make them know what they did. You did both, he said with a chuckle. And that's all right. By noon, my phone buzzed. Mom. I hesitated before answering. Hello. Her voice was brittle. Lila, we need to talk. There's nothing left to talk about. Yes, there is, she snapped, then softened immediately. Sweetheart, your father and we didn't mean for things to turn out this way. We were desperate back then. We thought we'd replace the money before you ever found out. I almost laughed. Replace $3 million? You made it sound like you were saving me from poverty while using my name to buy vacations. She sniffled. We just wanted a better life. Then you should have earned it, not stolen it. There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, the lawyer says we might lose everything. The cars, the house. Maybe you should start over, I said quietly. I did. And I hung up. That week, I focused on rebuilding. I found a small apartment near the city, enrolled back into my design program, and used part of the restored trust fund to start a small business, something that belonged to me. Grandpa helped me set it up. One evening, as we sat surrounded by sketchbooks and glowing laptop screens, he said, you know, this right here is how you win. Not by taking back what they stole, but by turning it into something they can't touch. I smiled. You think they'll ever change? He leaned back, sighing. Maybe. People like them don't learn through lectures. They learn through silence, through watching the person they underestimated rise. A few weeks later, I saw my parents again, not in person but on the evening news. Their house had been listed for sale. My father's company had dropped him for image reasons. My mother had been seen leaving the courthouse in tears after signing financial disclosures. I didn't feel joy or pity, just release. They had their choices. Now I had mine. That night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment overlooking the city lights, wind brushing my hair. Grandpa had fallen asleep in the recliner behind me, TV humming softly. For the first time, the world didn't feel cruel, just honest. I'd spent years trying to earn love from people who only valued control. Now I understood something deeper. Sometimes peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from walking away and letting the truth do its job. I whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, Grandpa." And somewhere between the lights and the silence, I knew this was only the beginning. 6 months later, I walked into the same bank where my parents once transferred my money behind my back. Only this time, every eye turned toward me with respect. My small design business, Aurora Concept Studio, had exploded in popularity after a celebrity interior designer featured our work online. Orders were pouring in. The girl they once called naive was suddenly running a company valued at over $4 million. Grandpa called it poetic balance. See, he'd say, smiling over breakfast. Money taken in greed can never outlast purpose earned through pain. But I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was chasing peace, and it looked good on me. Still, fate had its way of tying loose ends when you least expected. One Friday afternoon, I was meeting a new client at a downtown cafe. As I walked in, my pulse stumbled. Sitting near the window, thinner, paler, defeated, was my mother. She froze when she saw me. Her hand trembled around her coffee cup. "Lila." I hesitated, then nodded politely. "Mom." She looked exhausted, her once perfect hair dull, her jewelry gone. You look different, she said softly. I feel different. She exhaled shakily. Your father's in counseling. We lost everything. The house, the cars, even the savings. I wanted to call you, but I didn't know how. I stayed silent. The old me would have folded in sympathy. But the woman standing there wasn't the same girl who begged for approval. I'm not angry anymore, I said quietly. But I don't owe you what you took from me either. Her eyes watered. We were wrong, Lila. We thought we were teaching you responsibility, but all we did was take your trust. For the first time, her voice didn't sound manipulative, just tired. Real. I looked down at my phone where a message from Grandpa flashed. Proud of you, kiddo. Keep walking forward. And that's exactly what I did. I hope you find peace too, I said softly, placing a $20 bill on her table. Lunch is on me. She looked up, stunned, but I didn't wait for an answer. I walked out, sunlight pouring over the street like a quiet victory. That evening, Grandpa and I sat by the lake again. The air was cool, the sky turning pink and gold. So, he said, handing me a cup of tea, heard you saw your mother today. I nodded. Yeah, she's not doing well. He sighed. You feel sorry for her? A little, I admitted. But it's not pity. It's closure. He smiled knowingly. That's the best kind of revenge, living so well that their guilt has nowhere left to hide. I laughed softly. You always have the perfect words. He chuckled. That's because I've lived long enough to know when to stop talking and start healing. We watched the water ripple, calm and endless. And for the first time, I felt whole. Not rich, not vengeful, just free. A month later, Aurora opened its first office downtown. Glass walls, green plants, and a golden plaque by the door that read, Founded by Lila Evans. As I stood there cutting the ribbon with Grandpa by my side, I realized the truth. Sometimes the best justice doesn't happen in courtrooms or confrontations. It happens in quiet victories, the kind your enemies are forced to witness without ever being able to touch. The same girl who once stood frozen at an airport was now the woman everyone turned to admire. And when reporters asked what inspired my company, I smiled and said, family taught me the difference between inheritance and legacy. One's given, the other's earned. The cameras flashed. Grandpa laughed proudly. And in that moment, I knew my story had come full circle. The girl they underestimated had become the woman who learned that peace, not revenge, is the most powerful answer of all.